the global aluminum industry.
Let me start by asking you a question. Think about your phone, the car you drive, maybe even the soda can sitting on your desk. I mean, on the surface, they're completely different things, right? But they are all connected by one single incredibly important material. Any ideas what it is?
You guessed it, it's aluminum. This stuff is lightweight, it's strong, and you can recycle it pretty much forever. It's really one of the building blocks of our modern world. And in this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain on the huge global engine that gets this metal from deep in the earth into your hands.
Okay, so first things first, where does this stuff actually come from, and then where does it all go? This is all about the nuts and bolts, production and consumption.
The journey to create brand new aluminum is basically a three-step process. It all starts in the ground by mining this reddish-looking rock called bauxite ore. That's step one. Then, that rock gets refined into a fine white powder called alumina. And finally, and this is the really energy-hungry part, a process called smelting zaps that powder with a whole lot of electricity to create the pure, shiny aluminum metal we all recognize. This whole process is the very beginning of the global supply chain.
So, with all that effort, who's actually using this metal? What's driving all this demand? Well, the biggest consumer by a long shot is transportation. Think about it. Lighter cars and planes mean better fuel efficiency. After that, you've got construction for things like window frames in modern buildings, and, of course, packaging for all the food and drinks we consume.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The countries that dig the bauxite out of the ground often aren't the same ones that make or use the final product, and that's where global trade comes into play. You can think of it like a planet-sized conveyor belt constantly moving this material around.
At its core, global trade is all about finding a balance. When a country has way more bauxite or finished metal than it needs, it exports it, it ships it out. And countries that need more than they can produce, they import it, they bring it in. It's this constant flow, this push and pull that connects producers with consumers all across the world.
And that brings us to the idea of a global stock. You see, it's not just about what's being made or used today. There are literally millions of tons of aluminum just sitting in warehouses around the globe. This huge inventory is super important. It acts like a buffer, letting the market react to a sudden spike in demand without having to wait for a smelter to fire up and make new metal. So we've got the physical metal moving all around the world. But what determines how much it's actually worth? To answer that, we have to leave the mines and warehouses behind and step into the financial market, where price, profit, and loss are decided every single day.
You know, for any company in this business, it's a constant balancing act. On one hand, you make a profit when demand is high, when your energy costs are low, remember all that electricity for smelting, and when your whole operation is just running smoothly. On the other hand, you can face serious losses if there's just too much metal on the market, if you get hit with high taxes on your imports, or if the global economy slows down and people just stop buying things.
When you really get down to it, the global price of aluminum is moved by three main forces. First, the absolute classic, supply and demand, basic economics. Second, the cost of energy. Since smelting uses so much power, electricity prices have a huge impact. And third, a really powerful one we're about to get into, global policy.
And those price factors are just so crucial, because for this industry to actually grow, it needs investment. We're talking billions of dollars to build new smelters or invent cutting-edge alloys. And that money? It only flows when investors see a stable market and, more importantly, the promise of future growth.
All right, last but not least, let's talk about the rules that govern this entire global game, because government policies and regulations can completely change the playing field for every single company involved. So, what are policy and regulation? Well, they're basically the official rulebook. Governments use these rules to set environmental standards, to influence who trades with whom, and to ultimately shape the entire competitive economy of the global aluminum industry.
And inside that rulebook, there are two really powerful tools you hear about all the time: tariffs and subsidies. A tariff is pretty simple. It's a tax on imports. The goal is to make foreign metal more expensive to help protect the local producers. A subsidy is kind of the opposite. That's when a government gives its own producers a helping hand, maybe through cheap energy or loans, to help them compete better on the world stage.
And the impact of these policies? It's massive. It's a true ripple effect. They can totally reroute where aluminum flows around the world. They can create a huge advantage for one competitor over another. And eventually, that cost, or that saving, it finds its way all the way down to the final price you pay for that car or that soda can.
So all of this brings us to one final big question. We know how useful aluminum is, but we also know making it from scratch is incredibly energy intensive. As the whole world pushes for a more sustainable economy, how does this vital industry adapt? How does it possibly balance the growing demand for its product with the urgent need to shrink its environmental footprint? That right there is the challenge that's going to define its future.